Well, I will call the meeting to order and ask everyone to introduce themselves and what appointment they have to the CPC. I'm John Kratzley, and I'm the chair, and I'm a select board appointee.
I'm Hester Schnipper from the Housing Authority Board.
I'm Nancy Nelson with the Historical Commission.
Paul Grasso, the Recreation Commission.
Judy Zombrecker, the NIC.
Peter Ward, Select Board appointee.
Burton?
Burton Flint, Planning appointee.
Tom Kern, Select Board appointee.
Very good. I declare we have a quorum. And do we need a roll call now to open? I think that's a sufficient roll call for the quorum.
That worked.
Heather, good. All right, so the first matter of business is to talk about the town meeting and some developments on our two warrant articles that the two parts of our warrant article that the FinCom did not vote on in the past, and they took those two up again on June 4th. But let me just check with Heather about the town meeting. It's still June, I had June 29th, is that?
I believe it got postponed to July 29th.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could, I see Linda has joined us, so does that sound right, Linda?
You're muted.
That sounds right.
July 29th. Okay.
Linda, what is the plan for how it will happen?
That's still under discussion.
Yeah. We all heard on NPR about the Lexington Zoom town meeting, right?
Oh, because they're representative, and we're not allowed to do that at this point.
Yeah.
But yes, that was an interesting experiment.
Yeah.
So regarding items G and H, or no, F and G, the Garreau Park and Warner's Pond fund distributions that we voted in our article. The FinCom took them up again on June 4th at their June 4th meeting after a long conversation about the capital budget for the town, which contains both of two capital budget items. As we know, they're big capital budget items for those same two projects. After a long discussion of those, the FinCom voted to have their chair, Dean Banfield, send a letter. I don't know if the letter can be put up on the screen, to the select board and the town manager. Basically, I'll just read the last sentence in the final paragraph. Well, here comes the letter on the screen. And of course, you can all access it.
Yeah, yeah.
But the final paragraph is important. The Finance Committee expressed a desire to see the parks and playgrounds items deferred, and authorized me to write to you requesting you consider that moving the article, that's the capital budget article 11, without the items labeled G1, G2, aggregating $2,095,000. Now, I sent an email to Dean Banfield today to see if there'd been a response to the letter, and his response late this afternoon was that he did not have a direct response to the letter, but a scheduled meeting with the town manager tomorrow to discuss the letter. So in terms of our getting any further advice or any further thoughts for our thinking regarding how our funding of those same two items might be impacted or affected by town decision on those two capital budget items, we still don't have the town perspective. The other piece of information that Dean Banfield passed along, and Linda may know more about this, was the possibility that the town meeting, and Hester, this speaks to your question, the town meeting might be a abbreviated number of articles with certain articles deferred. I'm sure this has not been decided by anyone yet as to what that might happen, but it seems very unlikely that Article 11, the capital budget, or Article 44, that's ours, would be considered a deferred article. And that would still leaves open whether our funding of Giroux and Warner's Pond could be impacted by a town decision. We could be asked to think about our funding in relationship to a town decision about the, I keep calling it Parks, the TV show, right? Parks and Recreation. It's Parks and Playgrounds. It's Parks and Playgrounds that might be altered depending on how the town responds to the FinCom letter. So Linda, I don't know if you want to add anything, but that's my understanding, that we still don't have a select board or town manager response to the FinCom letter on Article 11 and taking out or perhaps considering removing Parks and Playgrounds.
That's correct. And the only other thing I would add to that is at the FinCom meeting, I think at least one of the members reminded that they were reminded the group that they were responding to articles as a whole and not to be dissecting an article such as the one put forward by your committee.
Well, as we presently stand, we are affirmed by the FinCom in, what is it, 8 of our 10. And we're on a holding, we're still in a holding pattern on 2 of them. But if any of you wanted to see the letter that Dean Banfield sent to the town, it's now on our website.
John?
Yes.
Judy, I had a question on the letter. It wasn't clear to me from the letter that they were requesting that the capital for both the Warner's Pond and Giroux property be withheld. It wasn't, I don't know what the 1G2 item was on the capital budget.
I'll be honest with you, I have not looked at exactly what's in it. I just assumed because it's $2,095,000, it would include their $500,000 each capital budget proposals that they showed us when they asked for our money.
Okay. So we just have to kind of take a look at it and see.
I think you probably have to break out that item,
Okay.
IG2 or 1G2 in the it's part of Article 11.
Yeah.
It's $2,095,000, and I must assume, I've been assuming that Giroux and their part of the town's capital, the new capital budget money for the town was in there. But it's a good point. We should figure that out.
So is the implication that CPC could be asked to withdraw these 2 items from the warrant article in advance of town meeting?
It strikes me as possible, but no one's raised it yet. It's just that we're watching what the town's going to do with their funding part. If they don't go forward, would they still want us to go forward?
Yeah.
And if they don't go forward and we do, we'd only be banked. Well, we know already Warner's Pond would be banked anyway. It wasn't going to be spent immediately. It was going to wait for another year. Giroux was going to be spent for the toilet and the upper ridge trails. But if
I just looked up what the article is. For some reason, I happen to have my town warrant handy, and it's Emerson Playground improvements, Giroux improvements, ride out improvements, Warner's Pond dredging, and White Pond improvements. So it's all 5 of those. So it's an implication not only for the current article that we have before town meeting, but it could have implications for monies that we have, that the CPC has funded for some other projects too, it looks like, possibly.
Yeah, that wouldn't affect our current warrant article.
No.
But things we authorized in the past that are still banked.
Right.
So that's the update, and we're still, we'd still be waiting any advice or suggestions or recommendations from either the FinCom or the town or the select board as to the relationship between the capital budget monies for those two projects and our monies. I don't think, Peter, I can tell you much more than that.
No, that's fair.
So, John, I'm a little curious about what our direction is here. I presume the FinCom wants to reduce that authorization for borrowing because that directly reduces town costs potentially going forwards, and maybe the town will have more borrowing authority for other more pressing needs in a future budget. But the CPC funding is essentially already allocated. I mean, it's dedicated to CPC funds. And if we were to go ahead and forward with the article as it's written, and then the town elects that they don't want to match funding for these projects, then that money would be banked within the CPC. It doesn't put the town in any worse financial position because we wouldn't be able to redirect that money. So it seems to me that although maybe for future years we would be thinking, let's say for the next cycle that parks are not where we need to spend our money, but we need to double down on affordable housing due to increased demand. That in this funding cycle, I'm inclined to say just let the cards lie, and if the town ends up not using those funds, then they're banked and perhaps will be clawed back in some period of time.
I am completely sympathetic with that point of view. I just wanted the committee to know that there's a relationship issue here that we might hear more about.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to move on then, unless other people have questions about our warrant article and where it stands. We're good with the FinCom except for these two. That leads us into number 3, which is the funding application deadline. I think the finalizing the application. So I'm sure you all have, and I think Heather, we can go up on the screen. It's a revised proposed schedule for our informational sessions and our site visits and our applicant interviews. And I think Heather wants to mention one, and probably some of you spotted it. I think I heard that Judy spotted it.
Yeah, Judy pointed out that November 3rd is election day, so we cannot have a meeting that day. So I figured we'd discuss it as a group, what day we change it to. I mean, we could change it to another day that week, or I had skipped over October 20th. So we could add, we could add October 20th as a meeting date instead of November 3rd. Or we could try to schedule a meeting another day the week of November 3rd. I don't know what people prefer.
I'm interested in overall reactions to the change schedule from anyone, and that particular question about October 20th.
At the moment, it feels very distant, and I'm kind of indifferent. We'll try to make anything work.
Right.
It may be easier to just change it to October 20th, just because it might conflict with planning board. So there was one other meeting, Burton, that conflicts with planning board, which is November 10th. But kind of with this condensed schedule, it leaves us with only a certain amount of Tuesdays. So I can check right now if October 20th conflicts with planning.
Good for me.
Yeah, while you're checking, Heather, Tom, nice job. I mean, it looks like we're just going to have a very intense fall with meeting practically every week, and that's just it's going to be the nature of it. But good job getting it all coordinated, and it looks like the 20th is a open slot.
Mm-hmm.
And did we establish the last meeting that we really can't kick off the process until after town meeting?
that was certainly my initial recommendation, that people would want to see the results of town meeting.
Yeah.
In
That
terms of
makes sense.
what we did fund and what might not have been funded, and what people may want to come back on that's related to town meeting or that might be new. So I thought the October 9th was about as close to the end of town meeting as we could reasonably start.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just thinking about how everybody will probably be available in July and August, unlike in most years.
Right.
It's too bad.
Well, we do have informational meetings, correct?
Yes, so I drafted the schedule to include an informational session on August 18th and also on September 15th. So obviously the September meeting would be, if town meeting ends up being that week, we would need to change it, but I don't know what week it's going to be. I would assume it would fall around like the last week of the month, because that's what they've been kind of continuing them at, that increment. But it's possible we might.
Yeah, they would need to stay away from September 1st because that's the state primary. And there's going to be probably early voting the week before that. So I don't know what impact that would have on whether they would have town meeting that last week of August. I think that would be unlikely that they would do both at the same time. Just a thought.
Is there a date for the primary?
It's September 1st.
Yes.
September
And
1st.
September 1st is the state primary, and there's legislation in the State House right now to provide for the week before that early voting, which is something we typically don't have for primary elections.
Tom Keene, will you be available August 18th? I will be on vacation. Or is it too early to know?
I'm available.
Okay. Then I'm hearing no real dissent. I like September 15th. That's my birthday.
Oh, great.
We can have a cake if we should be
Yeah.
together, right?
Maybe we'll be in person or we'll have a virtual cake.
Virtual.
All right. So we'll go ahead with those two dates. The other thing I see, Heather, is something called July, August TBD.
Yeah, so I just, I put that in there if we have essential business that we need to discuss to have a meeting.
Okay, so that would be not to decide tonight, but that would be triggered by some event.
Right, something comes up.
Like something about these two pieces of our warrant article.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as the committee is comfortable, we'll leave that flexible. So, and I think Tom's right. We're all going to mostly be around.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So that would turn us to this schedule with the change to October 20 from November 3. That would turn us to the application. And I took a quick look through the application. I realized it was last year's. And the question I had for Heather was, other than changing the dates, did you have any other changes to recommend? Did any committee members see things that we ought to add or?
Looked okay.
No.
I don't know if everyone looked at the application. It's the standard application form we use every year, and I just change out the dates.
Yeah.
So I'll change out all these new dates that we just talked about tonight. And now I'll edit all that, and I can post all the new dates and put the new application online. And I can send out a press release about the application being online with the submittal deadlines and the informational meetings. So I can start working on all that this week.
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Tom and I'm sure be happy to look at the press releases and, you know,
Okay.
see if anything to say. I did have one suggestion. I wondered if the pages could have page numbers. maybe it's not possible, but I was flipping through them and I lost track for a minute.
The application or the CPC plan?
Well, do they flow together, or is the specific? The application is 2 pages, right? Ending with number 11 at the bottom of the second page.
I have to go look. I can add page numbers because last year the application packet was 6 pages.
Okay. And then I did have a question on number 8 on what I call the second page. It's called application requirements and attachments. And it's number 8. And it references the 2018 CPC plan. Do we have a later one?
I'm sorry, which? So that's what I'm working on now that we have like the updated application. I'll be plugging in all those dates. But what we won't have is like the town meeting stuff.
Yeah, it's the last few words of number 8.
Mhm.
The 2018 CPC plan. Do we have an?
Right, we have a more updated one that you approved last year.
Okay.
So I can reference that one for now. And then we probably wouldn't approve this year's until after town meeting. Or you could approve it minus the section of all the new warrant article stuff.
I'm not sure I follow you. What warrant article stuff?
The warrant article that hasn't happened because town meeting hasn't happened.
But is that in the application?
No.
Oh, okay.
So all I see on the website is the application process as well as the requirements and attachments.
Well, we have an application requirements, general selection criteria, and specific use criteria in the 4 different areas. That's what I have. And I have, yeah, and that makes 6 pages.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I have last year's application packet on the screen.
Yeah.
So this is what I'll be updating with these new dates.
Okay. Any other comments from committee members about the application or its contents? And you're saying you think we'll get another look at it, Heather, before?
I can send it to you and Tom, but I'm basically just going to plug in all the dates.
Okay.
And then get it posted. But I can send you that along with the press release once I have it all drafted.
People will probably start picking this up, I would think, sometime this summer.
Right.
All right, very good. Then the next item were the those 2 sets. If I got this right, the next was those 2 sets of letters for every project.
Yeah. So
there's a grant letter. Well, go ahead, explain the 2 because it was, as I saw the website, there was one for each.
Yeah. So I posted the draft. The funding allocation letter just kind of explains the funding. And then if it's a town project, it gets a memorandum of understanding, an MOU. And if it's a non-town project, it gets a grant agreement. So those are what are posted on the website for you to review. Again, this is not something we're gonna approve tonight because town meeting hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. Usually we don't even look at these really until after town meeting happens. But they do have all the updated project conditions within them. And then obviously they'll need to be edited after town meeting with new dates. I have no idea what date funds will be available after town meeting. So I'll have to find that out. And then if the funding changes at town meeting, then that'll need to be edited as well.
So my question is, you also have a set of draft conditions that I printed off the website for each of our projects.
Yep.
Are they in the second letter? When you say the grant agreement, I understand the funding allocation letter tells you got your money. The grant agreement, does that contain these same conditions?
Yes, the grant agreement and the MOU is where the conditions are written in.
All right, so I think for the committee, the conditions is a 4-page document ending on page 5 with general provisions. And did anyone have questions or amendments? I think we've been through these once.
You've been through them twice.
Twice, okay.
I had one question, and maybe I misinterpreted it, but did I see that instead of having the grantee provide an update every 6 months, we've changed it to 1 year? Did I read that correctly, Heather?
I was gonna.
Yes, that's something we discussed.
Okay.
I was gonna take that, Judy, I was gonna take that up next under number 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I had the same question.
Could I just mention one thing in the memorandum of agreement for the historic preservation projects? I spoke to Heather earlier about this. It says the Secretary's standards for rehabilitation need to be followed. And some of these projects may or may, I want to go back and check to see that those are the correct standards to be applied to the historic preservation projects. And it gets kind of geeky, so I can talk to Heather about that later.
Oh, this is the Secretary of the Interior stand, number 4.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Buttrick House, E4.
Well, there's that one, there's the belfry,
Okay.
and there's the roof. So one seems more rehab, 1 or 2 seem more restoration or preservation to me, but I'd have to go back and look so I can be a little more articulate about the distinction and treatments.
Okay.
But there's plenty of time.
Okay, you think it might affect the language?
Maybe. I don't know. We'll see what Heather says.
Any other comments on?
I had one other question, and maybe it's not on the letter, but if the town meeting continues to get put off, and perhaps this article isn't even brought up, how does that impact the conditions for the RHSO and the funding, the administrative costs? If those costs are incurred between, say, now, the beginning of the fiscal year and when town meeting occurs, will those be able to be covered retroactively, or do we need to specify that in the letter?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I was wondering, Heather, if it had some relationship with the 1/12 budget concept.
Yeah. I have no idea. But that's a good question, and I will try to look into that.
Okay.
The regional housing, we're only funding half, right? So
Right.
there might be half of that in the 1/12 budget
Mm-hmm.
concept. What's the second one, Judy, besides regional housing?
It's the administrative costs for the
Administrative,
CPC.
Well, Heather, thank you. Looking into that one. Other questions on
Nope.
our draft conditions, our letters of grant, and the grant agreements in the MOU? So we'll move along then to the setting the project update report deadline, which Judy, I think that relates to how often we want the project,
Yes, right.
updates. And Heather,
So you guys previously discussed switching it to just once a year, except in other cases where you want more updated requests. There was the language in there that you, upon request, you can ask for more updates.
Oh, that's right. I do recall that now. Yeah, thank you.
what would have what was our 1 year anniversary? I assume we've passed it.
So usually we end up getting them in the spring, like right before town meeting.
Yeah, isn't it? It's like March.
Yeah,
early April.
and then the other deadline is like December, and it kind of just falls in like a bad time.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of seems like not much happens in between them anyways. So it made more sense to just go down to once a year, unless you want to follow a project more strictly, then you can request more updates.
And do you have a recommendation on, given that it used to be March and December, and we are busy this fall, very busy. You have a recommendation when to make the next ones due?
I think March was probably a good time because it gives us a little bit of time to review it before town meeting and then before the end of the fiscal year, to kind of close up some loose ends if we need to and try to close projects out before the end of the fiscal year.
Committee thoughts?
Seems fine.
Yeah, I recall the conversation now. That makes sense.
Okay.
Agreed.
Is that sufficient guidance, Heather?
Yes, except for, so this year we were also supposed to be getting project status reports in March. And I did end up getting a few, but definitely not all of them with everything that happened. I think it just completely fell off everyone's radar. So if we want to set a new deadline for just this year, just because we missed the March project status updates,
yeah.
I can re-email every open project and give them a new deadline to get me reports by.
I think we should not accept the ones in March of 2021. We shouldn't accept the ones you just got.
No, I'm thinking like, do you want to set a deadline in August to look at?
I think, yeah, if they've missed March 2020, that they could submit in August. I think that's a good idea, and maybe try to get it cleaned up prior to the busy fall.
Yeah.
But Tom, we also shouldn't accept the ones that did come in. They'd be too old.
I don't know if they'd really be old. I mean, I haven't gotten any requests to spend money out of those accounts, so I'm not sure if anyone has even done any work on their CPA projects in the meantime.
Everything's been frozen.
But I'd include whoever submitted their reports on time in March on the new email and say, if there's anything to add, can you please
I think that's a good idea.
Good.
Try to get as much update on everybody as possible. August of 2020. Okay, very good.
So should I do we have, when did we schedule the informational session? August 18th. So maybe I'll have them do August 11th, and then we have them and we can review them at the 18th if we wanted to.
That would be great.
Okay.
I think that would be terrific to get a sense of where all these projects stand in the period that we've been quarantined and people have not been making progress. All right, is the committee's...
Yeah, I'm sorry, John, can I just add to that? I think also good for them to be able to project how has any of this changed their outlook in terms of delays or their financials are upside down as an organization. It might be, just to your point, it may be a really important time to try to understand how they may come back and say, we really have to put things on hold for a year and not spend the way we thought we were going to, or whatever their forecast is.
That would be particularly important if they're running up against the 30-month deadline.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I can add that question to the email.
Thank you. Then without further comment, well, let me just stop for a minute about public comment. I know there are several members of the public that have joined our meeting. And so up to this point, we have discussed the FinCom recommendations. We've discussed the new schedule for applications, the application form, project conditions, grant agreements, MOUs, the new project reporting deadline. And we're about to turn to a couple sets of minutes. So if there's anyone from the public that would want to speak on any of the work we're doing that we've covered tonight, this would be a good time. All right, then we'll move to 2 sets of minutes. And one is
So we have February 4th and June 2nd.
right. Now they both got labeled February 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Judy pointed that out, so I can fix that.
The only one I comment, I'm sure you spotted it, February 4th minutes on the first paragraph. I think it's the word summons should be summoned.
Mm-hmm.
The CPC was summoned to the Finance Committee meeting.
Okay.
And anybody else had anything else? We can vote on this one.
So on February, I don't have anything, but for the second set, I do. So sorry.
All right, let me ask if there's a, well, we can vote on both sets at once, I think. So let's turn to June 2nd.
Okay. And is this June 2nd now on the screen? Okay, it's I'm on 2 screens now. So it's the comment about the Masonic Lodge and the roof.
Mm-hmm.
It's important, I think, on the second page to note, they did an investigation, but they did not do a destructive investigation of the roof, which means that they're still in the dark a little bit about what they're going to find when they start any project that might be applied for or approved. So there was no destructive investigation as part of the report that they did.
Okay.
Would you like that added to the minutes?
I would, because I think it's remembering what the Historical Commission was concerned about. They were very concerned that their application might not include a worst case scenario. And one of the things I had hoped that they would do was to do a more, it's called destructive investigation, so that they might have an understanding, really a better understanding of what they were going to find when they took off the slate and then they took off the underlying wood shingle roof material.
Heather, do we need a vote to change the minutes and add that?
You can just, whoever makes the motion can say as amended.
Okay.
Heather, Tom here. I think I was present for that June 2nd.
Oh, okay.
Thank
yes,
you.
You were.
So then I'll entertain a motion to approve the February 4th, 2020, the June 2nd, 2020 minutes as amended.
So moved.
I have a second, and I just have to do a roll call for the record. I vote yes. Tom Kearns, Vice Chair.
Yes.
Judy Zembrecker.
Yes.
Paul Grasso.
Yes.
Burton Flint.
Yes.
Nancy Nelson.
Yes, and I assume we'll get a copy of the revised.
And Hester Schnipper. I think Hester may have stepped away. And Peter Ward.
Yes.
All right, and that's unanimous. And The minutes are approved. Now, we're open to other business. Again, if there's any member of the public who brings other business, or another member of the committee wants to raise other business, this would be time to do it. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I'd have to do a roll call again. I'm John Kratzley, the chair. I vote yes. And Tom Kearns, the vice chair.
Yes.
Judy Zembrucker.
Yes.
Paul Grasso.
Yes.
Burton Flint.
Yes.
Nancy Nelson.
Yes.
And Peter Ward.
Yes.
Then I declare the meeting adjourned. And I
Thank
thank
you.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful to
Thank
see
you, everybody.
Wonderful to
Good
see
to
you.
see everyone.
Yes.
And we
Bye.
will have a July, August meeting as we learn more about the two pieces of our warrant article, or any other insignificant business that gets us ready for town meeting.
Yep.
Bye.
Good.
Good.
Thank you.
Right.
Heather, you
Bye.
all set? Heather, all set?
All set.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
Everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.